Alright dudes, today we'll take a look at some of the best items you're going to want to get right away in Wuchang Fallen Feathers. A lot of these actually come in very early on, but a few will drop in a little bit later, especially once you get to Cloudspire. Of course, spoilers warning ahead, as we are also going to talk about some specific encounters, so without further ado, let's get started. Now, I'm not going to cover the very obvious weapon drops that we get very early on, which we also covered in the Perfect Start Guide. Instead, we're going to go with the ones that truly have some special powers. Beginning with the first one, which is going to be this Steam-powered spear that I also talked about in my other build guide. But basically, this has the Steam Chain ability, and it's an amazing option to have as an offhand weapon if you generate at least 2 Skyborn Might stacks, because you can unleash this very strong AoE spin attack, at the end of which you're going to perform a fiery tornado. So this is especially useful against targets that are specifically weak to fire, which you're going to encounter quite a lot of in the early stages. By the way, you can get the spear very close to the shoe sanctum, so just exit and follow the same route as I am, going downwards and then taking the circular path all the way back to the stairs that were leading to this location when you first came here. Here you're going to take it to the left side through this village all the way into the back when you're going to see this junction, but in this case we're going to take another flight of stairs upwards in a nearby cave. And inside, if you go up into the back of it, you're going to notice that there's a panda character, and in this case you can give in bamboo shoots in exchange for items, one of which early on is going to be this spear right here. Now, once you finish that and made your way back to the Shu Temple, the main entrance over here, you're going to notice that there's a Ming Dynasty enemy you can go ahead and defeat. And this already drops the Ming armor, which is actually going to be one of your better anti-physical melee damage early on. Gives you quite a bit of physical resist over there, and even compared to another better later on version, it's actually not that far off. Plus, it gives you some pretty good resistance to burn, which is going to be one of the main ailments you're going to have to worry about in Warship's Rise. For the third weapon, we have one that we covered extensively before, that is the Lashing Whip Longsword, and also one of my favorites. This has probably one of the best range in terms of any melee weapon in the game. It's basically a longsword but also a whip, so it strikes enemies from very far away. And its whip dance mechanic, which is really great, only costs 1 Skyborn Might, and you can use this even if you don't have any stamina left. So a very good way to incorporate it into your rotation when you exhausted your stamina with your normal attacks. You can just use a whip dance, and by the time you're done with a couple of these, all of your stamina is pretty much back. Again, like before, you're going to get this from the Mercury Workshop waypoint just below the Shoe Sanctum, following this circular route over here with the 2 enemies back on the wooden scaffolding. Here you should find it over to the right side. Also, if you got the sword, might as well just drop a little bit further down into the same Mercury location, all the way after the second elevator shaft. You will find a bridge with a corpse over here, and upon it you're going to find this twin pendant that gives you quite a lot of stamina regeneration. But it actually doesn't stop here, and we have a bunch of other awesome weapons on the way as well. But before you actually get to the weapon, you're going to get a very strong spell too. So from the Shu Sanctum front entrance, we're going to make our way towards Lu Hongliu's boss encounter. So you're just going to follow my route, going over that invisible bridge once again, and at the end of the junction, you're going to keep it to the right side, going upwards into the village area. Passing the large gate, just follow my route once again, but once you are over here at the main road once again, pay attention to the trap with the boulder that the enemy will set against you, so be careful and not go just yet. Once you're done, we're going to go ahead and use the ladder with the house to the right side of said enemy. So again, follow the same route as I am. From this point on, you can defeat these enemies up on the scaffolding, but whatever you do, eventually you should reach this location where you will see one of these annoying dancing elemental enemies. Now, you can totally go down and fight it if you want to, but I found it much easier to just use a throwing pot against it. There are many of these oil barrels around it, and chances are that you're going to just one-shot it right away. Point at which you're going to get the Infernal Flames, and you're also going to get a quest item, but specifically Infernal Flames only costs 2 Skyborn Might, and it's a pretty decent spell to have, especially if you want fire damage as a spellcaster build. Also, the spell explodes on impact, so if you just aim it towards enemies surrounded by oil pots, it can also be very good. But otherwise, the only downside is that it's actually going to travel quite slowly. However, before we leave the area, if you previously paid attention to the opposite rooftop, you should have noticed that there is another golden item on the ground, and that is the very cool Empyrian Greataxe. So to grab that, you're going to just need to navigate further into the village all the way towards this house with the enemy that will emerge to ambush you from inside. From here, you can take up the stairs and this will bring you to a ladder, giving you access to the rooftops. So from here, just turn back 180 and navigate the scaffolding all the way to the madness enemy. And once you're done with the enemy, you can go ahead and just grab the Greataxe over here. So this is going to be one of your best versions, at least for the time being, and it has the ability called Empyrian Crash. So essentially what this does is it lets you launch yourself into the air, avoiding all the damage in the process, and if you have at least 2 Skyborn Might, you're going to empower the Greataxe with fire, letting you descend with a devastating blow. So it's one of my favorite and most just brutal weapons I've encountered so far. It's also very good at staggering, since axes are amazing at that. If you have any trouble making enemies flinch, this may be the weapon for you, even if it is slow and more methodical. But otherwise, a very fun weapon to play with. But probably still not quite as fun as the next weapon, which is the Firearm blades. I put this off for the longest time, but they are much better than you think. So basically, these have the ability called Perfect Aim. With this, you're going to spend 1 Skyborn Might charge, which is going to let you auto-dodge, shoot a bullet, and then if you follow up with an attack, it's going to cause a couple of subsequent explosions on the same target, which are pretty good at building up their stagger meter as well. I've been using this in an early dual blades build, and I will have to say it's actually much better than I thought it was, and I will retract everything I said before. You can totally go with a very strong dual blades build way before level 50 or 60. But in this case, the way you're going to find this is after you have defeated Wuchang. In this case, you're going to open up this path over here with the fallen tree back at the Shu Sanctum. So if we follow the same route, now we're gonna go upwards up the hill up until we find this first junction over here, where we will keep it to the left side. So that was the place we came from, and now we're gonna go here down this set of wooden stairs into the next section, which is going to loop around the Shu Sanctum. Once you're here at the bottom, follow this route up until you reach the other area of the village, and from this point on, you're going to take this flight of stairs downwards over here behind some of these houses. In the back, you should find about 3 or 4 enemies that are kind of annoying, but if you defeat them here on the forge, you should find that set of blades. Now, before we actually move on to the next section, I do have a few more weapon gems / benediction sockets that you can go ahead and grab for some of your current builds. Specifically, we have the blocking clash, which is going to just make your blocks and clashes so much better, and this is also going to be useful for another build in the end game. Also, the Skyborn Vigor, which helps a ton with stamina recovery. Even Counter Force, which will further help you with the counter moves. And there's one more over here that will also help you with spell build if you're going with that. So here's how you're going to be finding them. For the Skyborn Magic Gem, we're going to go to the same routes as we did before, close to the Shu Sanctum that was previously leading us to the Panda Cave, except that at the junction, we're going to now follow the bridge to the right side. From which point we're going to turn to the right, follow this location all the way towards the Burned Forest. And you should eventually find this tree over here with the item right in front of it. For the counter force, you're going to find it also inside of a chest very close to the Shu Sanctum. So just exit and follow the same path as I am. Eventually, you're going to reach these houses, and the first one to your right side, you can go ahead right behind it. Somewhere around the middle, you're going to notice an enemy emerging from inside, defeat it, and then go inside the building. Here, you should find that chest with the counter force right inside of it. In terms of the blocking clash, you're going to get this very early on, also from the way over here from the Shu Sanctum. Just make your way downwards and follow the same path as I am, past this invisible bridge. From here on, progress further down the path, and in the end, go downwards here to the left. From here, progress towards the shortcuts to the Revenant Temple. However, midway through, you're going to see that there's a path upwards here to the right. Go inside the shack and you're going to find the chest inside with the blocking clash. Meanwhile, for Vitality Power, this is going to be at the top of the Shu Sanctum, just following the path with the broken tree that we covered in the Perfect Start guide. In this case, you're going to go at the top of the hill, following the same path over here to the left side and defeating the double sword enemy over there. Behind it, there should be one of these chests that reward you that item inside. And of course, finally, the Skyborn Vigor is something that you can just buy from Wuchang very early on the moment you can speak to him. But like I said, it doesn't stop here, so we do have one of the best armors coming up right now. However, it's at the end of a boss encounter. So that's basically going to be through that area below Shu Sanctum, pretty much going from there all the way to the Bandit's Cave. And very close to the waypoint, you're going to have a boss encounter in the area that I also covered in the Perfect Start guide. However, once you defeat that boss encounter, you're going to get a couple of items. So one of them is going to give you the boss item, which you can go ahead and bring back to Tao Ching. And this is going to give you one of the best physical damage resist weapons at this stage in the game, which is the Centipede Armor. And also, just the way it looks, one of my favorites. So this will give you quite a lot of slash, blunt, and stab mitigation. However, it does come at a cost. In terms of ailment resistances, it kinda only works a bit better with corruption, but even that, not the whole set. However, this will help if you are just exclusively fighting enemies that don't really do anything in terms of elemental damage. However, that's not the only item you got. You also got this really awesome Astral Blade from the boss, which comes up with a very interesting ability called the Awakening Seal. So this is going to cost 2 Skyborn Might, but basically gives you another stack of binding time on top of the one that you already get from your one-handed sword skill line. And it also increases your spell damage for a time. And this is going to be one of the best weapons for pure spellcaster builds. I already have a video dropping later today with that, but basically this is going to empower your weapon damage pretty much like your Temperance spell damage also does. So it's kind of like having two at the same time. Plus, you have a lot more Skyborn Mind generation automatically baked into the build, which is going to just make everything so much easier if you just want to focus on spellcasting. It's one of my favorite weapons and especially a good option to have if you didn't get the deluxe edition one. Anyway, we have one more which I want to cover, and that is going to be a very easy to miss spell called the Burning Flames. Not going to lie, this got me out of many sticky situations, and it's probably one of the best fire spells in the game. You're going to get this on the way towards the Reborn Treant boss encounter in Soulwood. So as you go over there, you're going to notice right at the beginning that there's a ladder you can take up to the right side. Climb all the way at the top. There's even a shortcut you can open to your right. However, you're going to keep it to the left side where you will find a second ladder. From here on, just progress down the path and you should see the mini boss not too far off. It's not going to be the easiest to defeat, but once you take it down, you are going to get the Burning Flames. And like I said, this is going to be a pretty good one to have. It does cost 3 Skyborn Might, but it also has an auto dodge baked into it, so it can also trigger Alacrity, which if you have the passive upgrade for Alacrity, it can further give you Skyborn Might when you perform it. You just have to do it right at the moment an enemy is about to hit you. But otherwise, it carried me all the way to the end game and can be very useful against many of the enemies weak to fire. Now, on a final note, I have only a couple more, and again, spoilers warning ahead as we are going to talk about some boss related stuff, but one will involve this really awesome Flamebringer weapon, and another one we're going to get a really cool Thunderstorm spell. So this is something that you're going to get from Cloudspire, and specifically once you get right here to the Cloudspire outskirts. From the shrine, you're going to do a 180 and you're going to turn back going to the building here to the right side. Inside, grab the ladder and make your way to the second level. From here, keep it to the right and we're going to go into a second building over here to the left, going past all of these enemies, where you will take another ladder all the way up. From this point on, we're going to go past that big zombie monument all the way behind it, where you will see a couple of adjacent routes, but we're going to keep it to the one of the left. From this point on, simply navigate the same way I am all the way to the enemies with the cannon. Do make sure that you dodge and not get absolutely blasted. But behind them, you're going to see a ladder to your left again, where you will reach the bandits camp. And right over here, you're going to already have a mini boss to defeat. But if you defeat it, this is going to give you two things. One is going to be a set of keys to a nearby boss encounter. On the other hand, it's also going to give you the Thunderstorm spell. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of torn on this one. On one side, it looks really cool and its range is not that bad. However, the hitboxes could use some improvements. This definitely seems to be much better at somewhere around medium range, but still very solid option to create a lot of paralysis build up. However, now we're also ready for the Flamebringer. So from the waypoint, jump down the ladder and now take the circular path to the left, all the way down until you will see these big gates. Here is where you're going to use that bandit set of keys, which will give you this really cool boss encounter against, the General of the North, basically, which is also important for some of the NPC quest lines. But if you defeat this, you're going to get a Flamebringer from it, as well as another electricity spell. However, Flamebringer is one of my favorite longswords in the game. Basically has a similar attack to the whip dance, but it's going to instead set itself on fire, so it's a very good source of extra fire damage. Plus the damage, at least in terms of pretty much every single metric, seems to be higher than any other longsword by this point, so it's a really good option to have. I already played with this on stream if you want to go ahead and check it out, but it's an amazing alternative to the whiplash longsword that we got before. And that pretty much concludes today's video with some of the best weapons you can get early and also mid-game. Of course, there are much more coming out later, so a different video will obviously drop at some point about them. But this is it for now. Thanks much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.